update. Of course, Daniel, this has been a humiliating situation for Israeli authorities, but a new development in terms of a commission. Talk us through the process and what kind of teeth will this commission have? Right,
so that's really the big question, Benita, is what sort of impact will a government-sponsored probe have that the Lahav 433 investigation won't have? Now, if this decision is approved by the Israeli cabinet, there will be a judge, a former judge, that will be really heading this probe or this commission, which will allow the investigation also into the negligence, of course, of the prison services, something that will give the government body more authority than it would have today if this isn't sponsored by a judge, because that really would be under the authority of the Israeli police through Lahav 433. If this commission is led by a judge, that means Lahav 433's investigation is effectively frozen, and then it goes through the ministerial sponsors. And that really goes to show that this does appear to be an issue that at least the public security minister, of course many others as well, see that this is an issue and there is probably fault within the service itself, within the prison service, and one that might indeed involve higher ranking officials. So this is an issue that likely is going to maybe even part of the Israeli cabinet. We'll see what the decision ultimately will be.
Daniel Semach, stay with here in studio. We've got more to discuss right now. Let's go to the West Bank. Our correspondent Pierre KLOCHENDLER joins us from the Hawara checkpoint near Nablus. And Pierre, much concern around the solidarity protests, that tensions could boil over in the West Bank. What are you seeing there right now?
Well, about half an hour ago, we went further north at the entrance of the city of Nablus at about 600 feet away from where we are. I'm going to show you. You can see that cars are just coming in and out, and that means that there's nothing really special happening. We saw kids, 12, 14-year-old kids, a group of 5, 6 kids burning 2 tires just there, and nothing else. The soldiers that were in full battle gear here where we are standing just left and are just cruising the area in their jeeps, which seems to indicate that there's not going to be a wide-scale confrontation, at least not in this area. And right now we're not seeing on Palestinian media anything which resemble what happened yesterday when there were 8 different points of friction in which there were clashes and Palestinians here in Hawara, for instance. Over 50 Palestinians, according to the Red Crescent Society, were wounded by inhalation of gas. So right now, the situation is under control, and the messages that the Palestinian Authority is sending seems to signal that there's solidarity, of course. There is a sense of unity that the Palestinian Authority is trying to project, but they're between a rock and a hard place right now, because most of the escapees were from Islamic Jihad. Islamic Jihad, just 3 months ago, one of their militants died in the hands of the preventive security of the Palestinian Authority, which triggered a lot of demonstrations inside Palestinian-held town. And of course, now 5 of the escapees are Islamic Jihad. Here, it's a fiefdom of the Fatah movement of Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority. And obviously, the Palestinian Authority, except for words, is not signaling that it's interested into a full-scale confrontation with Israel. The opposite, you see, there are people just beeping us, but actually, it's very quiet. We've seen Palestinian policemen at the entrance of Nablus without weapons, also monitoring the situation in the area, which seems to indicate really that the Palestinian Authority is not interested into a confrontation. But Hamas and Islamic Jihad have declared a day of rage tomorrow.
And we will be coming back to you for more updates and more analysis on that call by Hamas for that day of rage taking place tomorrow. Thank you so much for now. Correspondent Pierre KLOCHENDLER updating us there live from the West Bank. And still with me in studio is our defense correspondent, Daniel Tzemach, and we're changing gears a little on a very personal note. It's a bittersweet moment for the channel. Our Daniel Tzemach is leaving to move on to new opportunities. Daniel, nearly 5 years covering a very complicated and fascinating beat. Talk to us about your highlights, your big moments.
Yeah, I think that, we just came from where Pierre is standing there in the West Bank. I think some of the highlights really were covering these situations as they're happening. When there's unrest in the streets of Israel, in the streets of the West Bank, being able to be there during some of these protests that may start with a group of 5, 6 children, and then lo and behold, you have a complete escalation in a very small space, and being able to be there on the ground to show the true picture of what's taking place. Of course, problematic situations, but an important story and picture to see. So it's of course, there are many different stories that you remember covering. You also remember the people that you covered with, and it's been an honor and a privilege, of course, to work alongside you, Benita, and all the colleagues here at I-24 News in the field, in the studio, and yeah.
Well, we wish you all the very best, as we say here in this part of the world. Bahatzlacha. On behalf of the channel, it has been a pleasure to work with you, Daniel Tzemach, our defense correspondent, a consummate professional, a dedicated reporter, and an all-round fabulous human being. Daniel Tzemach, all the best. Be well. Thank you.